My name's Jake, and this is a story that happened several years back, one I actually forgot about until not long ago. I was 17 that summer, working nights at a small pizza joint on the outskirts of my hometown, the one I grew up in. Honestly, I wasn't crazy about the job, but with no cash and parents who would have gone ballistic if they knew I was unemployed, I didn't have much choice. It was one of those jobs you take just because there's nothing else available. Long, slow nights, sticky uniforms, and an ancient delivery car that struggled up hills. At least I didn't have to use my own ride, which would have been a nightmare. Oh, and by the way, the pizza we made was absolutely terrible, like really nasty. I still can't understand why anyone in their right mind would order from that place. If it weren't for the fact that we had some tech and the place didn't look totally run down, I honestly don't think we would have gotten any orders at all. That spot is definitely the last thing I miss about my childhood hometown. And that's saying something. But the only good thing about working there was that, because the pizza was so bad, or maybe because the place was so far from the downtown area, maybe both, people rarely called in. So most nights were dead silent. I won't bore you with the dull details of what my nights usually looked like, because you can probably imagine. One night, I was restocking the fridge when the tablet lit up with a new order: large sausage and olive pizza. I remember that part because we never put olives on our pizza. The address was way out in the middle of nowhere, past our delivery zone, and I was about to reject it out of habit. But before I could, Russell, our manager's a guy in his early 30s who mostly hung out in the back scrolling Reddit, looked over and told me to take it. Said we hadn't had a single delivery in over an hour. I didn't argue. When the pizza was ready, I typed the directions into my phone and grabbed the pie. I figured it'd kill about 30 or 40 minutes. As I was about to leave the store, I looked more carefully at the printed instructions Russell had stapled to the box. I'd ignored them until then. They said, and I remember every word: park on the street behind the house, walk through the backyard, knock only on the back door. That caught my attention a little, but my young brain just thought of some reasonable reasons why someone might not want me using the front door. Maybe they didn't want to wake an old person or a kid inside. Maybe their front door was under renovation. Maybe they were trying to hide the delivery from a parent or spouse. Honestly, it could have been anything. All I kept thinking about was how slow the night was, how much longer it'd feel if I just sat around folding boxes. So, I decided to do my job. But the second I set foot outside, I started questioning my decision. It was one of those summer nights where it felt like walking through Sufot, humid and completely still, like even the air was frozen in some invisible gel. If that sounds weird, I get it, but the stale, sour smell you get during those kinds of nights is pretty unmistakable, kind of like old plastic mixed with sunbaked dirt. That's what it smelled like outside. Honestly, I hate that smell more than anything, but it was unavoidable. I rolled down the windows for a couple of minutes, then gave up and turned the /C on full blast. The address wasn't in the direction of downtown. It was completely the opposite. Even though the pizza place was pretty much in the middle of nowhere already, this was even further out. The drive was supposed to take about 25 minutes, but the road was so empty it felt like it took forever. I might be exaggerating a little, it's not like there were no houses for miles, but the farther I went, the less dense the neighborhood became. When I finally reached the address, I realized I was coming up behind the house. The GPS had routed me along this narrow side street running parallel to some backyards. It didn't have any streetlights, and the houses had no porch lights on. It was just shadows everywhere. I slowed down to double-check the house number because it looked totally deserted. No lights on, no cars in the driveway, just a sagging backyard with tall grass and a rickety wooden fence that didn't even close all the way. Still, I parked right there on the gravel shoulder, grabbed the pizza, and started walking up the slope toward the back door. I had the pizza in one hand and a flashlight in the other, angling it down toward my feet so I wouldn't trip. Once I reached the top of the hill, I saw the back door. It was one of those old white doors with a tiny glass pane at the top, covered by a cheap curtain. I knocked and waited nothing. I knocked again, knowing full well my manager would be furious if I returned empty-handed. Still, no response. Just as I was about to knock a third time, I saw the curtain move. It was just a tiny twitch, like someone brushed it with their finger fast, barely noticeable if you weren't staring at it. I stood there, expecting the person behind the door to come out soon, but the curtain shifted again, and I caught two unmarked cars pulling up to the side street behind my car. My heart jumped. For a second I thought I was about to get in trouble, maybe for trespassing or something. One of the officers stepped out of one of the cars, big guy, glinting badge in his hand, but he wasn't in uniform, just plain clothes. He waved me over, so I started walking toward him, thinking maybe he was the one who ordered the pizza, or maybe I'd beaten someone home from work. But as I got closer, I saw he was holding the badge out, flashing it at me. Turns out he was a cop undercover. No uniform, just plain clothes. The second I was close enough, he told me to go back to my car and wait. That was it, just that simple. So I backed away slowly, climbed into the delivery car, and sat there watching the scene unfold. That's when I realized there weren't just two officers, there were at least 5, maybe more. They all had flashlights, but none of them said a word. They moved around the house stealthily, circling it as if trying to hide from sight. Not one of them knocked or announced their presence, just silent. It was totally bizarre. I remember distinctly one of them reaching for the back door handle, same door I had just knocked on, and gently trying it. When it didn't open, he just nodded at one of the other officers and pulled back. I felt like I was spying on something I shouldn't be seeing, and honestly, I probably was. Eventually, the first officer came back over to my car, crouched beside the window, and I rolled it down. He gave the pizza box on the seat a quick glance and let out a short, tired sigh. He was vague, but seemed decent, not some jerk trying to scare me. He just told me there was an ongoing investigation on that property, and the officers had been staking it out. He said he was sorry it took so long to intervene, and that I had shown up right when they started repositioning their vehicles. I tried to show him the order on my app, but I could tell it wasn't helpful. It had a phone number, the address, and the first name Jerry, but that didn't really help much. He read it, took the number down, and told me I should leave immediately. I argued a little, saying my boss would have my head if I came back empty-handed, but he just shrugged. Then he told me to leave, and he walked away from the car. I was pretty pissed, but I knew I had to go. I drove off, and the whole ride back took forever in my mind, like I was frozen in time. It wasn't until I got out of the car that it really hit me how serious the situation was. If the police hadn't stopped that guy when they did, I have no idea what might have happened. Honestly, I don't even know what would have happened if they hadn't shown up. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that the only reason that person didn't answer the door was probably because they saw the cops. But then again, why order a pizza if you knew you were being watched? Maybe they didn't know, they thought they were alone. Or maybe they knew about the cops and I was just part of some setup. Maybe I was bait to see if the law was watching that house or if they had left already. The curtain flickering, the silent night, the timing, it all doesn't make any sense. I know I'll never truly get an explanation about what really happened that night, and honestly, I try not to think about it much. I probably would have just forgotten it altogether if my buddy Mike hadn't brought it up last week. At first, I didn't even remember it clearly, but once he reminded me, the whole thing came flooding back. I figure I'd better share it here, just in case I forget again or something. And just last year, this happened again. Well, almost. I'm 40 now, married with 2 boys, ages 7 and 5. I work in insurance, which sounds boring, and yeah, it is, but it pays the bills and keeps my family stable, and that's about all I care about these days. A couple years ago, my dad passed away after battling cancer for a long time. He left us a small beach house down in Delaware, nothing fancy, just a simple place right off the boardwalk, about a block away from the ocean. I'd never been there much because he used to rent it all year. My favorite part is the upstairs deck that offers a perfect view of the water. That house became our sanctuary every summer. We'd go there for a week or a weekend, just us. It's become a family tradition. The boys love it more than anything. They spend hours on the beach, riding bikes, exploring the town. Honestly, it feels like a gift my dad left us somewhere we can escape and make memories. This story is about one of those trips last summer. We went down in mid-July, from Sunday to Friday, knowing the crowds usually thin out midweek when the beach quiets down a bit. I remember that Wednesday night very well. The boys had finally crashed around 9:30 after a full day at the beach, and my wife and I sat out on the deck, playing cards and sipping wine. That's when our older son, Jordan, came outside. Looked pretty worried. Told me he kept hearing scratching noises in his room and it was keeping him awake. I looked at my wife, then set my glass down and stood up, telling him I'd check it out. I told her to stay put. Just the usual house sounds. I figure red pretty old place after all. I followed Jordan downstairs to his room, and he pointed toward the wall near his bed, motioning for me to keep quiet. We stood for a bit, and at first I didn't hear anything. But I didn't want to dismiss him either. Kids sometimes imagine things. So I stayed there, listening. After about 20 seconds, I finally caught a faint scratching, just like he said. It didn't sound like something in the ceiling or the rafters, more like inside the wall itself near the baseboards. That's when I heard breathing, slow, deep human breathing, not an animal. My stomach sank. I flinched back and let out an involuntary Jesus, and right after, I swear I heard the most guttural, angry scream I've ever heard coming from inside the wall. It was so shocking, I yelled again, this time feeling like a punch to the gut. I grabbed Jordan's arm and yanked him out of the room, then ran down the hall to wake my younger son, Scott. Luckily, he was still out cold. I didn't give him a chance to wake up. I just scooped him up and bolted. My only focus was getting back upstairs to the deck where my wife was. As we reached the bottom of the stairs, I shouted for her. And that was when I heard another scream, closer this time, behind me. I spun around to see a man, covered in dirt and filth, charging straight at us down the hall. I nearly tripped trying to get up the stairs with both kids, me heart pounding, adrenaline racing, but we made it onto the deck, just barely. The second I slammed the sliding door shut, he hit it with full force, making it shake and rattle. I truly thought the glass was going to shatter. He started clawing at the door, shrieking, pounding, yelling things I honestly don't want to repeat. I threw myself against the door and shouted for my wife to grab the kids and call 911. She covered their ears, pulled them back away from the scene. I kept my eyes on his, trying to block him out from view of my family. He was a madman, completely unhinged, smeared in dirt and blood. I saw him smearing some of it on the glass as he raged and tried to force his way in. I don't know how long I held the door shut, felt like forever, maybe a minute or 5. It's all a blur. He had endless energy, and I fought to keep him out. My only thought was protecting my family. I was ready to fight if the glass broke. Just when I thought I couldn't hold on any longer, the police showed up. Must have come around the side because within seconds, I saw 2 officers inside the house running straight at the guy. One tackled him from behind, the other helped restrain him. The rest of that night is a jumble in my memory. They took that guy out, put him in the back of a squad car, and then asked me what happened. I told them everything I knew. We examined the house afterward, trying to understand how that man got inside and how he got out so fast. Turns out, there's a crawl space I'd never seen before, an entrance hidden under the back porch. It leads into a tiny tunnel running alongside the foundation, with another access panel pushed loose in Jordan's closet. I had no idea about this, never even thought to check fully when I inherited the place. Just a few days later, a detective called to follow up. He told me that the guy admitted he'd been hiding there for months, that he discovered the crawl space during the off-season, and that his plan that night was to hurt us because we'd intruded on his new home. Apparently, he'd been stealing food from both our house and our neighbors' trash bins. We didn't go back that summer not because of fear, but because of trauma. I didn't want my wife or kids anywhere near that place for a while. They didn't argue. I hired someone to seal that crawl space shut tight, and once it was secure, I finally started to relax. We went back there this summer, and I can say things are mostly back to normal. Growing up, I lived in a rural area, miles from anyone, where riding bikes was like exploring a whole other world. Summer was always my favorite season, still is, honestly. But life in the country had its own vibe, a quiet, unbroken peacefulness that I never really found in the city. That sense of being completely alone, in a good way, that's what summer nights meant to me back then. I was 16, and I had this friend named Emily who was always a bit reckless, always testing limits. One night in July, just us two bikes and a bottle of wine, deciding to go stargazing. Not a new thing for us. We did it pretty often, just wandering out past town, into the woods or fields where no one bothered us. Emily knew a spot far out past the edge of town, an abandoned stretch of farmland that was basically a no man's land, perfect for escaping. We left around 10 p.m., biked maybe half an hour, maybe a little more. We didn't turn back until we were well past the last signs of civilization, just a wide-open field. No buildings, no fences, no cattle, just grass and the endless night sky. We laid down a blanket, popped open that cheap red wine Emily snuck along, and stared up at the stars. Our goal that night was simply to spot a shooting star. Emily asked me if I thought we'd actually see one, and I told her probably not, but we should keep watching. Out there, under the vast sky, it was easier to see stars than in town, but they still weren't guaranteed. We just kept looking, waiting for that flash of light. The night was mellow, and I felt myself starting to get drunk, the wine doing its thing. It was that kind of night where time feels like it's melting away, like what I'd mentioned earlier. I don't really remember much beyond that point, but one tiny moment sticks out. Just a blip. We were leaning back, relaxing, and Emily looked at me in a way that seemed like she was about to say something more than friendship. I'd had that feeling before about her, just some curiosity, nothing serious. But that night, it kind of felt different. I didn't ask or say anything. Maybe I was just tipsy or reading too much into it. Anyway, that feeling passed. We joked about something dumb, she said, and then she looked up just in time to see a shooting star streak across the sky. If you've ever seen one, you know what happens to you, just can't help but laugh or shout out something. We giggled and Emily told me to make a wish. I don't remember mine, probably something silly. We kept talking, our moods up after the shooting star, just soaking in the peaceful darkness. I closed my eyes for a second, not to sleep, just to feel the cool breeze and settle into the quiet. I swear, I only did it for about 5 seconds. When I opened my eyes, Emily was gone. Not just like she went to the bathroom or was fiddling with her phone-ish, was gone. Her bike, her blankets, everything that belonged to her had vanished, even though my bike was still right beside me. My heart jumped. I sat up fast, thinking she was messing with me, but when I spun around, I couldn't see her anywhere. That's when a weird, unsettling feeling took over, almost like the air got thicker, like someone had dimmed the lights in the sky or smeared something over it all. The stars looked dimmer, the sky off somehow. And it wasn't just my imagination, the air felt colder, not naturally cooling, but more like I'd entered a different version of the same place. It all made no sense, but I knew deep down I was scared. I checked my phone, 3 a.m. on the dot. That timestamp is burned into my brain now. I blinked a few times, trying to convince myself I wasn't dreaming or losing it. I hadn't fallen asleep, I was sure of that, but I could no longer trust my senses. Was Emily really gone? Or was I just out of it? I called her name over and over, but she didn't answer. I had no idea what to think. The only explanation I could come up with was that she had ditched me somehow, maybe got annoyed, or just wandered off. I tried her funny no answer. I felt tears coming, but I didn't care. I just started pedaling back toward my house, trying to stay calm as fear set in. The ride home felt like eternity. I've never been so terrified on a bike before. I didn't stop until I hit my driveway, heart pounding, exhausted, totally confused about what just happened. As soon as I got inside, I was out cold. The next morning, I texted Emily first thing, expecting she'd apologize or at least tell me what had happened. But instead, she just asked me where I'd gone last night. I told her I'd woken up alone at 3 a.m., thinking she'd left me behind. That's when she hit me with what made me decide to write this story, that she'd woken up the same time alone, and I was gone. She had waited over an hour, then biked home angry and confused, thinking I'd left her. But I swear, I didn't leave her. I disappeared just as much as she did. We kept trying to make sense of it, going in circles, but nothing added up. Neither of us remembered acting weird or making any calls or texts. We were sure we'd both called each other when we woke up, yet all those calls and messages vanished from our phones. It was like some ghost had wiped out our memory of the night. Eventually, we just let it go, or at least stopped talking about it. Still, I think both of us are far more freaked out than we'd ever admit. I know I was. For months afterward, I'd lie in bed, staring out the window at the stars, and think about that night. Taylor and I didn't do much stargazing after that, maybe once or twice, just as a faint attempt to reconcile things. In a weird way, life kind of went back to normal. We continued with our routines, and that was that. But I still have no real explanation for what went down that night. I'd never call myself superstitious or believe in ghosts or aliens, but everyone I tell these stories to says I experienced something unnatural. Maybe they're right, maybe not. But what I do know is, I get this gnawing feeling that something happened that I'll never fully understand, no matter how long I live. I haven't heard from Taylor in years, but I'd bet my life that she still wonders about that summer night in the field as much as I do.